Hey everyone, Tom Smoot here, biomedical engineer. We all know microplastics are showing up everywhere, even in our bodies. In fact, I called new research bananas in a recent video, but don't worry if you didn't catch it. Right now I want to tell you the story gets even more complicated and a lot more concerning. It's all about PFAS. All these tiny plastic particles aren't just floating around our environment innocently. I'm going to say they're acting like chemical sponges to an extent, and what they're soaking up has me a bit rattled. It's something I think everybody should know, so let's get into it. One thing that really had me thinking was a Substack article by Dr. Eric Topol. He gets deep into the nitty-gritty details of microplastics research, and up front I want to repeat his disclaimer. You can read it dead center. These reports don't prove cause and effect. If you're a reader and you're really looking to digest this kind of high-level science, you should make your way to a Substack and subscribe. But right now I'm going to walk through some of his points, explain how they relate to PFAS, and make all of this a little easier to understand. Then I'm going to connect the dots between microplastics and PFAS and give you some ways to keep up on product safety. So if you're interested in getting the bigger picture on how all this impacts our health, you're in the right place. And you should definitely mash those buttons to like and follow along. Now, we already know microplastics are bad news. We know they don't just sit there either. I showed this in a previous video. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you they actively bind to that PFAS class of forever chemicals. To really help you understand the impact of this connection, we should look at some of the organs in our body first. That's where Dr. Topol can help. He broke down a major new study in Nature Medicine, and the results are not good. I stumbled across his Substack because he previously broke down a study that confirms my recent video. Both of us were looking at large review papers, and before I go any further, I want to emphasize the value in these papers. A review isn't just an experiment. When I say it's a review paper, I mean the researchers did a full review of existing research. They stepped back to see the whole forest instead of just one tree. This is why both Dr. Topol and I are talking about review papers specifically. In this article, though, Dr. Topol built on our reporting with a disturbing trend. Microplastics aren't just circulating in the body, they're accumulating in places like the brain. When you put all this research together, the picture gets a little clearer. There's definitive proof of microplastics in the body. That's the clear part, but here's the kicker. The concentration of microplastics in the brain was, ready for it? 7 to 30 times higher than in the liver or kidneys. That's not just a little higher, that's a big number. And what's worse, the levels are increasing over time. So let's say it out loud. Plastic is everywhere, from the food we buy to the clothes we wear. It's constantly breaking down into these microscopic particles, and now we know they're flooding our brains. Okay, so finding microplastics in the brain is bad enough. But this study uncovered something even more disturbing. They also examined brain tissue from people with dementia. And what did they find? In people with dementia, the microplastic level in their brains was 2 to 10 times higher than in those without dementia. Now, you probably heard scientists say correlation isn't causation. This is a perfect example of why that distinction matters, so let's talk about it. Correlation means two things happen together, like people with dementia having more microplastics in their brain. But that doesn't mean one caused the other. It could be that microplastics contribute to brain damage, increasing the dementia risk. Or it could be the other way around, that dementia affects how the brain clears out these particles, letting them build up over time. Or there could be a third factor. This could be something we haven't identified yet that's making both of these things happen. Right now, we don't know for sure. But either way, it's a huge red flag that deserves more research. And here's another reason we have to say there's correlation, not causation. Because these microplastics don't just pose a problem on their own. They also act as carriers for another class of dangerous chemicals. If you guessed PFAS, you were right. Now, if you've heard about PFAS before, you already know they're bad news. These forever chemicals are everywhere. Nonstick cookware, food packaging, even our drinking water. But here's what you might not know. PFAS and microplastics don't just coexist in the environment. They interact. And according to a major review, that interaction could make them even more toxic. So this image comes from that major review I just mentioned, which again means researchers analyzed a huge collection of studies to get the big picture. And what they found is not cool. PFAS come from all these different sources, right? Factories, wastewater, household products, spreading throughout the oceans. But we see tiny plastic particles floating around. Those are microplastics. And they're not just floating, they're binding to PFAS, carrying them through the water and potentially increasing their toxicity. Think of microplastics like tiny little Ubers. Picking up passengers, only in this case, the passenger is a toxic forever chemical. So, this picture came straight from the research paper. They call it a visual abstract. Just like a normal abstract, it's meant to be a short summary. Do you think they missed any important sources of microplastics or PFAS? Let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll try to dig through some of the research they reviewed and see if I see anything outstanding. Otherwise, let's talk about these everyday products and how you can avoid them. All right, so we know PFAS are everywhere, but which products are the worst offenders? Well, Consumer Reports has been investigating this for years, and that's who you should go to if you want independent findings. And let's just say if you're trying to avoid PFAS, you've got some work to do. Let's see what they found so far. Even at low levels, these chemicals have been linked to kidney disease, immune suppression in kids, and metabolic issues. And it's not just one product category. PFAS are showing up in everything from cookware to food packaging. Let's actually take that food packaging as the example. Tests on fast food wrappers and supermarket staples found concerning levels of plastic-related chemicals. If you've ever bought non-toxic, non-stick cookware thinking it was safe, you might want to double-check that label. Consumer Reports tested Swiss Diamond, Always, and Red Copper non-stick pans, all marketed as PFAS-free. But did they actually live up to that claim? No. Some still contain concerning chemicals in their coatings. So here's the big question. Where do you think PFAS are sneaking into your life most? Your food? Your water? Your cookware? Drop a comment and let's see what everyday products people are most worried about. I'll go first. Where do I think PFAS are sneaking into my life? Easy. Food and water. It's unavoidable. But knowing that helps me make better choices. Like I have a metal mug in the research lab. And that's really the point of all this, right? We can't eliminate every risk, but we can reduce our exposure. So let's bring it all together. First, PFAS are everywhere because microplastics are everywhere. These tiny plastic particles act like sponges, picking up PFAS, carry them through the environment and into our bodies. Second, research keeps showing that microplastics don't just float around aimlessly. They accumulate in specific organs. We're seeing higher concentrations in the brain, the liver, and the kidneys. Now a potential link to dementia. Remember though, correlation doesn't equal causation. We can't say microplastics cause dementia, just like we can't say PFAS only get into our bodies through microplastics. But we do know these chemicals are showing up in places they shouldn't be, and they're sticking around far longer than we want them to. And at the end of the day, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just here to help you avoid unnecessary risks because our healthcare system is expensive enough already. If you're looking for safer products, go read Consumer Reports for independent testing. And if you want to keep up with the latest research, it doesn't hurt to like and follow along. I'm here to help simplify this biomedical science. That's all I got for now. I'm Tom Smoot, biomedical engineer with 8 years in a lab and always curious how our bodies work.